Andrew Yang, welcome back to The Issue Is.
Oh, fantastic to be back. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, good to see you. Unfortunately this week, another school shooting.
Oh, it's awful.
We have seen so many Democrats try to do gun control. Even when President Obama had a super majority, he couldn't get it done. How are you going to be able to get done when so many other Democrats haven't been able to get done? Why is it different with you?
Well, I do think that the American people are ready for us to take action on something that should have happened years ago. The consensus is building, and the NRA is at its weakest point in decades. So I believe we can get big things done in terms of common sense gun safety laws that most Americans agree should have happened years back.
So what do you do when the NRA says, no, we're not going to do it? Do you get rid of the filibuster?
I would be open to that if that's what it would take to help make the American people safer. I've got a 4-year-old whose school just had an active shooter drill, and so this is personal. But if you look up, one of the big problems that our government has been overrun by NRA lobbyists and lobbyists for the drug companies, the oil companies. So one of my flagship proposals is to give every American voter 100 democracy dollars that we could use then to flush out all the lobbyist cash and take back our government for us.
Another big story this week, of course, impeachment. What have you learned this week?
No, it's really unfortunate, Alex, but some of your darker suspicions now are coming out to light. But at this point, we know who Donald Trump is. And so I confess to being disappointed but not surprised.
And you've said you believe impeachment is a political loser?
Well, we have to face facts that not a single Republican crossed party lines to vote for impeachment proceedings, and we would need a couple dozen or so Republicans in the Senate in order to impeach Donald Trump and have him out of office. So it's likely not going to happen. My expectation is that he'll be at the ballot box for me to defeat in 2020.
And do you think he'll be strengthened, though, if he is acquitted in the Senate and then you have to run against him?
Well, this is the tough part. So number one, we have to make a case to America for a positive vision that people will get excited about. And when we're talking about Donald Trump, even in the context of impeachment, we are losing. Number two, if he is acquitted, then he's going to run around claiming vindication and innocence. And so his base is going to be galvanized around that.
Let's talk for a moment about your signature proposal, which is universal basic income, that $1,000 a month, the Freedom Dividend.
Yes,
right?
Freedom Dividend.
Okay, so the biggest question everybody has is, how do we pay for that?
Well, when you look up who are the big winners in the 21st century economy, it's Amazon, Facebook, Google, mega tech companies that are paying either zero or near zero in taxes. And I know this is hard for people to believe, but Amazon, trillion-dollar tech company, paid zero in federal taxes in 2018. So if we give the American people our fair share, a tiny sliver of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, every robot truck mile, we can generate hundreds of billions in new revenue very quickly and pay for a $1,000 dividend for every American.
Is there a concern that that's going to increase the cost of everything? I mean, one of the reasons people like Amazon is that it's so low cost.
Well, the great thing is if you put $12,000 a year into our hands, it's going to make a lot of Americans be able to afford things that right now are out of reach because we're living paycheck to paycheck. My plan would increase the buying power for the bottom 94% of Americans.
I know you believe that universal basic income is in part an answer to the homelessness challenge that we have here in California, our biggest issue.
Yeah.
How does that actually work, though? I mean, does giving $1,000 to somebody on Skid Row who's got mental problems, who's got a history of potential criminal violations, how does that help them?
I've talked to people who are trying to help get homeless people off the street. And what they tell me is that the first thing they do is see whether or not this individual is entitled to any benefits or programmatic revenue, like whether they're a veteran and have some pension coming in, whether they have welfare benefits, because they then use those funds to help get that person to shelter and into a better situation. After we pass the Freedom Dividend, every agency will know that every person on the street has $1,000 a month coming to them. We can use those resources to get them to shelter, to help get them treatment, to help them address substance abuse issues, and so on.
Let's talk for a moment about foreign policy, because you're also running to be the commander-in-chief, and you're running against somebody who has been the vice president, sat in the Situation Room, been the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, traveled the world and met with world leaders. You haven't done any of that. How are you more qualified to be commander-in-chief than Joe Biden?
Well, Alex, if you look around, what are the biggest threats of the 21st century? It's not state actors, which was the case in the 20th century. it's climate change, it's AI, it's loose nuclear materials and drones, it's non-state actors. So we have to have a commander-in-chief who's actually focused on where the puck is going, not where the puck has been. I'm particularly concerned about the fact that China may be set to leapfrog us in AI, which is going to be one of the key technologies of this era, both commercially and in the military realm.
Let's talk for a moment about your campaign. I've said that your events are the most fun.
Well, thank you.
Right? And so sometimes you cuss, sometimes you skateboard, sometimes you play basketball. You've done a whole lots of it. You crowd surf sometimes.
Yes.
What's sort of been the wildest moment with the Yang Gang where you were like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened?
Well, the wildest moment was when I met the gentleman who tattooed my face on his calf. Because I saw the image online at first, and immediately you think, is that real?
Right.
And then you meet the person who's a military veteran. I met him in Iowa, and oh yeah, it's real. So then I had to get a close look and take a picture of my face next to his tattoo of my face.
Yeah.
So that was probably the wildest experience thus far.
That is a real investment in your campaign.
I'd better win is what I said. I said to him too. I said, now I really have to win, because if you have a tattoo of my face on your calf, I got to make that the next president.
Yeah, he's more invested than anybody. We like to do something called personal issues, which is where we put 30 seconds up on the clock and
all right.
rapid fire questions. All right.
I like it.
What is your favorite sport to play?
You know this. It's basketball for sure.
Right. Favorite actor or actress?
I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Brad Pitt, man, that guy just never gets old.
Unbelievable. Great shape, right? Last thing that you binge watched?
The last season of Stranger Things I watched pretty quickly.
Best rapper of all time?
Jay-Z.
Favorite athlete of all time?
LeBron James is the first one that came to mind, even though I think Michael Jordan's still the GOAT.
Yeah, good call for a California audience. Favorite Thanksgiving meal?
Is there any other choice but a giant turkey with all the trimmings and then the potato and the gravy and the cranberry sauce and all that stuff?
Favorite presidential candidate other than you?
Right now or just generally?
Right now.
Like in history?
Right now.
Wow. I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, I think fondly of a lot of them. Though the person I get excited to see when I'm going to the debates, and as you know, I'm debating next week, I really enjoy hanging out with Joe Biden. He met my wife last week. He was incredibly gracious.
Favorite Republican?
The first person that came to mind, unfortunately, is the late, great John McCain.
Yeah. Debates next week. You've been prepping for that all day.
Yeah.
What's your strategy?
Well, the fun thing is we're heading to Atlanta, which was where Martin Luther King did most of his work. And my flagship proposal, the Freedom Dividend, is actually something that Martin Luther King himself championed in the 1960s. He called it the guaranteed minimum income. He said the simplest solution for poverty is to abolish it directly through a guaranteed minimum income. So I hope that being in Atlanta helps get this message out to the American people.
And last question, you're a basketball player. I've talked to Bernie Sanders about his game. I'm a basketball player as well.
Oh, good.
What's your game look like?
Well, my game is aging, aging a bit. So it used to consist of my trying to take people off the dribble and get to the hole. But now it's a combination of things that often ends in a fadeaway jump shot.
I love that. That's what LeBron's doing a lot of these days.
Oh, heck, you can't stay young forever. Father Time, undefeated.
Well, we've got a basketball hoop in our studio, so at some point we hope you'll come join us in the studio and
I would love
showcase
that.
your stuff.
Yeah, I would love that,
Andrew Yang,
Alex.
thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.